peek behind the curtains, and you'll find that recording a podcast conversation is a fascinating and somewhat unique experience. In that moment, the guest and host are speaking privately, sharing their thoughts and stories just with each other. Yet, they do so knowing that their words will later reach thousands of listeners, each experiencing the conversation in their own way, shaped by their own perspectives and reflections. At Insight Myanmar podcast, we try to conjure up the image of our listeners as though you are seated here with us, a third chair at the table, so to speak, which helps us create the feel of a more intimate conversational experience. So, as you listen, we hope that you can lean into this connection and join us in exploring these stories and discover where they may take you. Welcome to the conversation. We're glad you're here. For this episode of Inside Myanmar podcast, we welcome back one of our most frequented guests who's come on this platform, Thiri, but this is the first time that we're actually speaking in person. All of our interviews before has been remote. So I know that you are quite a guest favorite with many of our audience who appreciate and enjoy being able to hear from you. And it's been some time since the earthquake. We last checked in on you, and that was quite a tragic, traumatic time. And so I think this is a great chance to be able to check in with you, with your story, with your perspective, with your involvements, since we had talked to you first just a couple months after the coup in 2021 and kind of continue to follow through that trajectory of where you're at and your thoughts at this moment of time. So with all that, thank you again for making time and joining us for the conversation that follows.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on this platform again. And I've been on this platform multiple times. I even forgot about the Art Credit podcast that I was involved in. But yeah, I'm happy to be back on the platform.
So in this conversation, I think a good place to kick it off would be, there's so much to talk about and there's so much about Myanmar that we can go into. But it's always nice to go into personal. And one personal thing that I know is very important for you to share here is the importance of your relationship with your grandmother and who she was. So I'd like to invite you to share a bit about that.
Thanks. And so my grandmother, my grandmother was 82 when she died. And she died during the pandemic. And then one thing was, I think there's a calendar. I still have a photo of it. It's November 8th. My grandmother, in her handwriting, she wrote it down like the voting day, the election days. That was in 2020. Was it 2020? Yeah, 2020. My grandmother wrote it. And she wasn't sick. And so, because she's older, so she could have done the advance voting at home. There people come and collect the vote. But instead, she wanted to go to the polling station because the election means a lot to her. All the election, like every election day, she will wake us up and around 4 a.m. since 4 a.m. and to go and vote. And she was super active. And then she made sure there's a day, like this is the election day. She wrote in her handwriting for November 8th. And then she went there and she voted. She voted NLD because she wanted Aung San Suu Kyi to be in power. And a week later, she died. And so lucky that she didn't get to see the coup and all. Otherwise, she would have been protesting, I think. But the point that I want to make is this: my grandmother vote matter. Just like her, a lot of other people, their vote matters. They voted for a particular party, and that party won. And the reason I'm in this movement is because I need to protect my grandmother's vote. Being a young democracy, election, we didn't have a lot of election. Just to have the election, a lot of people have given up their life just to go out and vote. So my grandmother voted in 2020 election, and her vote is still there. And the party that she voted for didn't get a chance to rule because the military refused to transfer the power. And from there, everybody knows the rest, all these brutalities and everything. And now, as if those votes doesn't matter, the military started making another election, which a lot of Burmese people call sham election. So, and the world let it happen. Where is my grandmother vote? As well as a lot of other people vote. Their vote matter. Their vote needs to be protected, and nobody should ever allow this sham election to be happen, because we already have the election and our votes were stolen. So yeah, what the question is, what has happened to my grandmother vote? And should we just let this sham election get away and let the military general get away with whatever they want to do while the war doesn't stop? So, my grandmother is gone. Her vote matter. So is everyone's vote in 2020.
So this is very personal to you.
Yeah, in 2020, at the beginning, I didn't even want to vote. I was more leaning towards this no vote campaign, because I didn't agree with the NLD policy on Rohingya and a lot of other policy, because for the marginalized community, I didn't agree with them. And so therefore I felt like maybe I shouldn't go and vote. But then when the election days happened, before that I thought about, okay, we are a young democracy, and then a lot of people sacrifice their life to have this election, to be able to vote. And also, the thing is, the kind of, we need a stability to get out of this situation, like make one system to be more, to be stable, rather than every 5 years, one government start over. We need a bit more stability. So therefore, I just felt like, okay, the NLD should be in power. Even though I didn't agree with them, for the sake of the stability, I also voted. So my vote matters as well, but more than my vote, actually my grandmother vote really mattered, because she voted a week before. She took her time. She woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning. She went to the polling station and she cast the vote, because she was really hopeful. And she was very hopeful for the country. And now all of us, the whole family, have to be relocated as well. that we can't go back home. And I don't think that's what my grandmother had envisioned our future for.
Do you think of that a lot with the work you're doing?
Yeah, in a way, I think we need to protect the votes of people, including my grandmother. And so this sham election, it's such a insult to a lot of people in the country who went out their way to cast the vote. And if the military is allowed to keep doing the election or like change the result as long as they win, why would people need to believe in the democracy, or why should people believe in the election? And meanwhile, the whole world, even the country that educated us, democracy, democratic principle, election, voter education, meanwhile they don't step in. They completely abandon us in this madness. What should we to believe in it? Why should we believe in? It will make people not believe in this, in the democracy, in the democratic institution, and the principle, while the whole world is hypocrisy. Why the whole world is hypocrite.
How would you answer your own question?
Maybe because we don't see something better than this in our time. I don't even know what to believe in either. Just that, but I believe in people. I believe in people's power. I believe in people's voices. And growing up in Myanmar and growing up in the dictatorship system, it matters for us. All we are fighting, a lot of young people fighting. We just wanted to have the power at home every day and night. We just wanted, some of them is just very simple. We just wanted internet. We just wanted to, use the internet. We just wanted to breathe freely. We just wanted to be able to live like a human. That's what a lot of people are fighting for. And safety and security, waking up without needing to be fear. That's all people are fighting for. Freedom, that's what we need. We're not even asking the government or the military to provide this and that. We're just asking them not to refrain us from our own rights. But even so, it was so difficult for people to step in.
I mean, that's the work that dictators want to do, Putin and Myanmar and Trump, they want you to feel hopeless. They want you to feel that democracy is messy, that it's an imperfect system that's going to take away your rights and privileges and give them to those people who don't deserve them. They want you to give up that very hard struggle by seeing it's not worth losing everything for something that's not going to be good in the end. Just accept what it is they're offering. And so I think this is a shared humanity that many of us experience now, because far-right authoritarianism is on the rise everywhere. Fear of the other is no longer a practice of far-off hate groups and hate speech that are pervading our atmosphere, but our top leadership and billionaires that are actively promoting that. And so, I was jokingly remarking to a friend that it seemed like in the 1990s, everyone had some cause or something they cared about. Celebrities and businessmen and politicians. Everyone had to give lip service to these things that were cared about. And if there's one as this shift has kind of happened now, where like even empathy, thanks to Charlie Kirk, is supposedly a bad thing and something that we should abandon, and a bad value to have. That one of the slight silver linings in this time is that those people that still hold those values and work towards those values, you can actually be sure they really mean them this time, because it's extremely hard and sometimes hopeless to hold them. And back when it was so popular to have them, everyone had them. Everyone cared about, free Tibet or save the rainforest or whatever other slogan was there. And some people really did care about it, and some people thought they cared about it, but perhaps superficial, and some people knew that it was all just a cover. But it's if you're saying those things today, whether you're saying save Tibet or save the rainforest or whatever else you're saying, if you're saying them today, you probably do believe them, because it is not popular and not easy and not advantageous to hold those values. You're actually making your life a lot more difficult. And so if there's one slight silver lining today, it's that the people that are espousing that probably actually believe it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not that I was not really, I was just questioning, the wall. But at the same time, I'm really, it's just like questioning, because if you keep doing that, if you don't protect the movement to gain movement for restoration of democracy, if you don't support each other, that's gonna fall apart. You're gonna let those dictators win. You let them win without even needing to put much of an effort. And is that what we want? And I think that's what we need to, as globally, I think that's what we need to really answer. And if we don't step in for each other, that's exactly, like you said, right? That's exactly what the dictators want. They want us to live in fear. They don't want us to live like a human level. So
they're afraid of our joy.
Yeah. So therefore, one part of me, like trying to be glow and all this, is I don't want to give in to them. I don't want the dictators to win, because they want us to live in fear and frustration and going against each other with no creativity. Then, even though they don't rule directly to us, we will have brought them in our brain. I refuse to bring them in my brain. So therefore, being able to, find peace and being able to hold my peace in its chaos, being able to trying to hold the sanity in it, and trying to hold, remembering the little victory and also remembering the little happiness, it's my form of resistance against them. It's my form of resistance that I refuse to carry you in my brain to dictate me in my everyday life.
And this is where Myanmar becomes part of the shared humanity, in the sense that it's not some far-off place, but in the words of when we interviewed Kevin Casa-Samora, the head of International IDEA, it's the front lines of democracy. Myanmar is where the front lines of all these ideas are battling it out right now. So it's incredibly relevant to, I think, all of us, wherever we are listening.
Now it's the season for the sham election, which the activists call it as a sham election, which is the election organized by the junta, the coup leader, to continue on the power, to transition their power into something else. So I want to talk more about this critical moment, because we're already into 5 years of the movement, and then the military the junta started finding a way out, the exit strategy, and a lot of people have been very interested in it. This sham election has been a talk of the town, and I like to share more about this. What does it mean, and what does it mean for us, and what does it imply, and what's the look out to, like what to expect.
Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of anxiety among the resistance movement about what these elections mean, and because, as we've already suggested, you've been something of such an effective explainer in bringing this to people. from outside and all over, I think to start off with, we can look at why is this such a big deal, basically?
Well, it's such a big deal, not for us actually, not for the resistance side. I think it's more for the Myanmar per se, not Myanmar and the junta, as well as for the international, especially China and ASEAN. I think that became more of a big deal, and also more of a big deal to the international community, because I think Myanmar movement and this conflict has been hanging on for quite a few years, and also everything just get back into the cycle in a way that people really want to move on, I would say, because they just want to get things done. And I think people want this happily ever after stories, considering we have this kind of transition in 2010. So I think a lot of people felt that, okay, let's just get out of it and see what's next. That's more for international side, and also more from that's my understanding, and also for the military, especially the Myanmar regime, and Myanmar personally, I think he needs to find way out. This election is more of an exit strategy, not for the country to be exited from this current political crisis, but more for the Myanmar to be able to get out of the mess for himself, so that he can maintain his power while trying to convince his people that he was just controlling the power, not the coup. So a bit of a step back and a bit of a background. Before going for the military background, for the people, the general public, and also the kind of resistance side. Personally, myself, the election, it's not a bit. It is a big deal in a way. It's really scary time. What's going to happen to us if everybody sided with the military and send him back to home, and our future is a bit uncertain in that sense. So therefore, it is a big deal. But also, it is not quite related to us. A lot of people do not think that it's a bit indifferent to them, because this is not going to solve any political crisis, any political deadlock, and the conflict going to continue. So we don't see any tangible result or tangible way of finding peace or ending the conflict in the near future. This election is not viable for any of these solutions. So therefore, a lot of people felt indifferent. Those people who continue the armed resistance, they're going to continue the armed resistance. And those people who continue the non-violence movement and all the other kinds of campaigns and movement at home and abroad, I think they're going to continue. They're going to still resist. We are all going to still resist the military. So that is not really, it won't change much of the dynamic in that sense. So yeah, to wrap up, it's just it's a big deal for the Myanmar to hang on to his power. It is a big deal for the international community to get something out of it, so that they can either legitimize or find a way out, rather than this kind of hanging on to with no solution. And meanwhile, for the people who are the major stakeholder in this election, are quite indifferent to this election. So going back, why it is important for the military is that, according to the analysis of the defector group called MDSI, Myanmar Defense and Security Institute, for them it's more for Myanmar, since the 2027, it was Myanmar has been quite unpopular, more grievances against him, considering the loss of the military. So a loss of the town, Lashu town, which is the significant trade towns in northern Myanmar, which is on the China-Burma border, China-Burma trade route. So it's very significant blow to the military. So since then, we've been hearing more of a pressure on Myanmar. So he really need to find a way to get out and trying to please his own people. So one of the propaganda that he has used within the military is that they want to do there will be election and then there will be a transfer of power to the civilian government, quote unquote civilian government, and then there will be lesser fighting. Therefore, everybody's going to go back to pre-coup situation. So therefore, for the soldier to hang on to the kind of current fighting. So that's one of the major message that the military has been sharing it to own people. So for the military, rather than trying to convince outsider, which I don't think they care at this point, they really need to control their own grouping. So since then, his power became quite uncertain, and his election became more and more important for them. You can also see that it's evidence that the conversation about the election or Myanmar pushing for this kind of more and more election was after 1027, after the military defeat. So it's important for them to really get out and also trying to get the international recognitions, as well as they need to trying to they intended to lower the conflict, it seems, and also they wanted to improve the economic situation. So in a way to legitimize, or in a way to transfer of his power into something else. So therefore, it is a critical moment for the military as well.
Right. Now, as we move into this election season, we put this in the context of where we are in the Myanmar story. And a number of people that I've checked in with whose opinions I really respect and who follow this very carefully and are really tapped in, there has, I would say, over the course of the last 6 to 9 months, there has been this gradual shift, gaining momentum, turning to sudden, of a dark foreboding, of a feeling of loss, of a feeling of something slipping away. And this has been a range of activities, everything from the sanctions delisting to the wide number of actions of the Trump administration, which include everything from RFA and VOA folding and the cuts across the board, the DEI scholarships to Burmese students canceled, the recent TPS. And lobbying firms lining up to support the SAC, and combined with kind of a better battlefield performance and an improvement in drones, and all of these things together, as one person told me on a call, it just feels like they have been racking up a lot of wins, and even the things that are marginally wins, they're playing them off as wins, and they're doing a good job of that. Whereas we're still bungling together, trying to figure out what in the world we do in the way of response. And this was combined with a exasperated criticism of NUG leadership and a hopelessness there. And so as I've been checking in with more of these people that are very tapped in, there's been this real dark cloud hanging over them as to what phase we're in, what we're moving on next, feeling like a sea change is coming, and then now it's inevitable. Now we have to accept and adjust, and this real kind of subdued, dark, depressive kind of atmosphere. And when I met you recently, and because you are also in that short list of people that I always want to go to get their opinion and check in with and hear what you think. What was very interesting was, and this is again in the context of the elections, where this fits into this wider context. I would say, and you can correct us if I'm wrong, you seem to share this dark foreboding, and yet your way of framing or holding it was very different than these other people I was speaking to. And so I'd like to prompt you to expand on that.
Yeah. So for me, in the past years, I've been doing the training for the non-violence and creative resistance movement that I do the facilitation for that. So there's a theoretical framework about the movement building, which is we use materials from Beautiful Troubles, which is online interactive toolkits where you can check. So in there, before we started any kinds of workshop, we have to do this bit of context analysis in a way of trying to understand the movement. So any public movement, there's a theoretically framing, but it doesn't mean as a tool. Like, the nature of the tool is that it can't really answer all your question, but in a way to guide us to understand and trying to make sense of the thing, so that we can be prepared, what to prepare for, what to how to make sense of it, and what is necessary whenever we go into the movement. So there's one tool called that online you can search that and find the beautiful trouble. It's called movement campus. So as in campus, as in the kind of direction, right? So every movement in general, this is theoretically framed, it's like a wave. So it has life. It has ups and downs and going backward and forward. So every movement, that's the nature of the movement, that usually there is a space, there's a time when there's an issue and there's a grievances of the people, but then people never have a chance to really, they're wild, ready to form the fire, but there's no gas in it, no light in it. And then once there is a spark of the fire drop into this ready to boil fuel gas, it became this kind of spark. That's when the movement happened. So people would protest, people would do strikes and all this and all that. That's more that's nature. And then when those things happen, we usually have a peak, which is like a sense where people feel the sense of victory, where they kind of, we're winning, we have lots of hope, we have lots of light on the future, all this and all that. That's usually the peak where everybody's going to involve, everybody's going to be happy in this a bit more festive mode, which in Myanmar, which would be a bit more like the, anti-coup protest area and until a certain extent. But then after that period, in general, movement, it's natural for the movement to go down, like a normal human being. If you face some very sad things today, let's say one of your parents died, or one of your loved ones died, and you will be very sad. But then you don't sad all the time. You have there's a moment that you find it relaxing, even within a day. So just like that, the movement. So it has never been constant. It has never been on the peak. It's usually go down and less people. That's when the crackdown happens and all this. There will be lesser people in the movement, and the movement became going into a bit of different direction. When it takes longer, people became tired, and only very few people hang on to the movement, while a lot of the people just move back into their normal life for different reasons, or because of the crackdown, or because of all the other reasons. So that's normal for people to have delusion. So that state is called a bit delusional. So in this state, it's normal for the leadership to be find it really burned out, and also the supporter started feeling this kind of uncertainty, where they started questioning, they started doubting about themselves, if we are on the right track, are we going to win? Are we in the darkness and all this? And that's normal. I think a lot of us have been in this space for the past 2 years, even though we may not necessarily say that. A lot of us trying to kind of stick onto the peak moment. You can see that leadership, NUG, or other our political leadership, they like us to keep on being in the peak, which is actually resisting the nature, because it doesn't really matter. It's normal. It's natural for people to be ups and downs. Yes. So rather than holding people there with the false hope, so I think in the past year we've been fed into this kind of false hopes, and in the policy space where I work, there's a word like positive messaging. A lot of people want me to say the positive messaging on that. So I think this is more like the leadership wanted everybody to be at the peak level. but it is against the nature of the movement, which make people more tired.
Yes.
Because you are already tired, you should be able to let it go. You should be able to, rest. You should be able to like find a way, and you should be able to get tired, or being able to open to say that I'm sorry, I'm tired.
Yeah.
It is okay to be tired. Yeah. But we have been resistant about that. So that's important things to remind that it's normal for the movement to come down and all this. But then after this stage, what happened was, as normal people, like, okay, you may be sad and you have all this, like, your life, you thought that your life have no meaning, or you're done. But then, because it's a natural to human being and natural to movement, after a very long period of this not knowing where, usually people are like, okay, we can't just sit back. We have to do something. Let's find a way out. So people always find a way out. But then this time, they will be a bit more like, okay, let's reflect on it, like what we have done wrong, or what we could have done better. And so there's a moment of preparing for the next stage, which I think a lot of the movement builder now are in this a little bit of trajectory between the delusion stage and the preparation for the review and reflection stage, which is a good thing. So I think because we are now at this stage, the most important part in this stage is that while people are feeling depressed or feeling like hopeless, feeling burned out, the best way is to celebrate the small victory. The small victories doesn't mean like the small victory. We have a lot of small victory if we count, which indeed, yes, this is not gonna like take down the military. If you measure your achievement with this very high level impact, like whether our action have really make the military step down, we may not. But in every movement, there are also two parts. Yeah, you want to weaken your enemy, as well as you want to build your people power. Movement is people. You need people. So all this little movement, let's say like silent strikes, people involved, this may not necessarily change the regime, but it is to build the power of the people that they own. So those little victory, people still wearing flowers on Aung San Suu Kyi's birthday, that is the people power. Yeah. That is the victory. Yeah. And the other victory is that a lot of people continue serving for the revolution, no matter where they are. This is the victory. The fact that military has done every necessary brutal means to crack down and to make us weaken. Already 5 years, they use airstrike every day. They use every possible means to crack down on the people who are just, a lot of them are like, young people. And some of them were kids when the coup happened. And they even, military has done every possible brutality. They have do that with the help of other powerful country. But even so, they can't successfully take over or win the hearts of the people. And people are still resisting every day. So that is the victory that I think we should celebrate for. In very little things, like how people to people still helping each other, that is a little victory. And also a lot of Burmese people refused to be resettled. And life was very difficult in limbo, but still they hang on to this like Myanmar citizenship, Myanmar passport, with the hope that they're gonna go home one day. So I think those are the victory that we need to celebrate. I think we need to celebrate the people power and how people are continue resisting to be controlled every day. So those are the victory things a lot of other victory, like, GFM, Justice for Myanmar, getting the award, Greta Thunberg receiving the award, a lot of things that is a victory. And the other victory is that there are so many crises in the world that are not paid attention to, but at least Myanmar suffering is in a way paid attention to, and also it is recognized as the legitimate suffering. So I think that's very important part of it, and this is all the effort of every individual in the country. So I think we all should celebrate, take a moment back. All the leadership also should take that, consume that victory in. They are also part of it, but also people also have a power in it. So I want all of the Myanmar people who are listening, who are mostly maybe speaking English, or allies, a lot of allies who may be listening to this podcast, to consume that victory and then pat yourself that you have done more than enough. And it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to rest. That doesn't mean that we should stop. That means this is bringing the energy to bounce back for the next stage, because next stage are more important and more we need to prepare. We need to have the stamina, because the movement itself will be a very long movement. So I think we should be also a bit kind to each other. Now we forgot to be kind to each other, because it is possible when things are getting frustrated, when you're in dark, you started blaming each other, you started feeling like insecure, and then you started pushing each other out. But instead, I think we should be kind to each other in a way. A lot of the things so far we have done so far, and so many things that didn't lead up to the achievement, is some of them are beyond what we can do. Actually, there are a lot of other external factors that make us weaken, but still we are still very strong. So I think that matters, and that's the positive messaging where a lot of the diplomatic communities are looking for. It's not the false hope, it's not the false facts, it's a reality on the ground. So that's one thing. And then as of now, like with the delusion peak, sparkling and all this has always been Myanmar movement. Because if you look at all the Myanmar movement, it's pretty much that we have to do the reactive. It has never been the case that we ask our government or the military to do something because they don't do it, therefore we ask. There has never been a case. Most of the time it was that we're just living our life, but then it's the state or the military invading the space of the people, take away people's freedom and rights and liberty, and so only then we resist. So when you do the reactive, we usually ended up our movement in the peak and then this delusion. But now this is a chance for us to think about, be proactive. We're already into 5 years. We have learned enough. So how can we be proactive? So this next step of like reviewing, reflection, and also awaiting for the opportunity, which is like, just like when you go into the fighting, you just need to prepare everything when the call happens, just like that. So we need to put our people into places. We need to like bring up our skill set and how do we build something better, who should be where, and then what should be happen and what is needed for us to win. So I think some people started also preparing for that. So I think that's a good news. So for me, therefore, I am, of course, I'm sad. I've been collecting so many people's story every week. Of course, I am very extremely sad. But then I kind of prepare myself how much to put where, and also how to make keeping the pace of it. So therefore, I wouldn't really necessarily be impacted by much of this emotional, emotional thing. I have it. I have time that I fall down, but then I have a mission to go. I have a goal to go, and I keep on going where I need to be going, where I should be there. And I am doing what I am supposed to be doing. It may be small, it may be big. I don't compare myself with other people over what I can do. There is a place for me in this resistance, and I just need to do the best in my place, while other people will do their role, so that we don't really overlap or waste, or we don't really have a gap in resistance. So I want everybody to kind of have a reflect where is their place, and also where is their value added. What can we do to maximize this? So, and then meanwhile, being kind to each other. I think this is the most important thing that I think we need to remind.
Well, what I really love about this, and what I found so important when you explained this to me earlier, is to take some time and kind of go back in the process in my own life and where this fits in. When I first did a 10-day intensive meditation course, and I was locked in silence, that first experience, day by day for 10 days, I was experiencing certain extremes of emotions that I had never felt before, and that I was confused and scared and overwhelmed and everything by, and it just felt like I was in a jungle. And when I went to the meditation teachers to talk to them, they just seemed to be completely at ease and kind of knowing what day it was and what I was probably going through and what the process was. And after I finished that course, and as listeners know, as I went on to do many courses and meditation became a big part of my life, which is why I came to Myanmar, I came to learn that the process was not exactly replicable or duplicated for every single student. There were varieties, but there were certain things that you could expect. For anyone who's done a 10-day course, I could meet someone who's done a 10-day course in this tradition, and we could just kind of smile knowingly about day 4. We can talk about what happens on day 5, and we can kind of be speaking the same language. When we get to day 8, we can kind of be feeling we know what it's like. Day 9, certainly the same thing. And so this was the first time in my life that I had, I took that course when I was 21, 22 years old, and it was the first time in my life that I had ever been aware that there was a hidden process to something that I was experiencing that actually made sense. And it was such a powerful and liberating piece of knowledge. And so that when I was then behind the curtain with these meditation courses, and when I was serving students and helping students and tutoring students, to be able to bring my understanding and awareness into like, oh, okay, I know you're overwhelmed. I know you're confused. Don't worry. Like, this is the process. Trust the process. And on that course, the thing that S.N. Goenka, the teacher, said that always stayed with me was he really pressed the students, demanded them really to make an inner commitment that they were going to stay the course for those 10 days, no matter what happened. And that helped me so much, because I felt like I was locked in a prison of dread and fear. I just wanted to escape from, and just that demand by Goenka that I stay for those 10 days. It allowed me to get through and not be so elated on the highs and not be so devastated on the lows. Even though I felt, first course especially, I felt very elated and very devastated and very overwhelmed a lot of the time. It was understood that I need to write this out, and this teacher is giving me faith that I can write it out. And so that understanding of the process, it really changed my life, not just for the meditation, but for understanding that our life experiences at times fit into certain processes where understanding the nature of the process gives you, it's almost like a cheat code. It gives you such a liberating ability to step outside, or not to step outside of your feeling, because you still feel what you feel, but to not be blinded by it and understand just someone saying, it's natural what you're feeling. It's normal what you're feeling. When you're feeling something you've never felt before, it doesn't feel natural or normal. But when someone tells you, oh, it's day 2, this is what you usually feel on day 2, don't worry. Something equivalent to that. And so a couple other things I want to tag onto that. When I then became a teacher trainer, and I was training on intensive 30-day courses, TESOL courses, from the moment I started, I was taking that knowledge of the intensive course and thinking, what is the cheat code here? Like, I'm sure that these experienced trainers, they know what the end of the first week is generally like. They know what the beginning of the third week is generally like. They know what the middle of the second week, what they can generally expect. They know how to work with different energy levels of the students. And so I immediately, in addition to learning the content of these intensive courses, I also wanted to learn what's the cheat code of the processes. Same thing when I started doing pilgrimages in Burma. And I was working with experienced pilgrim leaders who had done 2-3 week intensive pilgrimages in India. And they had the same kind of cheat code about the honeymoon period that would start first, and then the exhaustion, some of the bitterness that would develop, some of the deeper fulfillment that would come. And in those first couple pilgrimages I did in Burma, I was overwhelmed by the feelings, and I was taken for a ride on a roller coaster. But they were able to help me, and because I had an understanding that processes existed, which is actually the first step. You need to have an understanding that there is such a thing as a process that exists, and that you could be in different stages. And because I had that knowledge from the meditation course, I was able to go into the TESOL intensive English teacher training courses, and then to the intensive pilgrimage experience, and kind of question, what is the cheat code here? What is what we do? The next step I want to go to is the first few weeks of the coup. And when the first few weeks of the coup happened, I did not feel, it didn't even occur to me there was a cheat code. It didn't even occur to me there was a process. It felt like this is a chaotic explosion of so many emotions that it's just impossible for anyone to make sense of it. No one can make sense of it. But then what happened was we got in contact with our mutual friend, Mark. And Mark had the experience of being in other countries when the rule of law fell and when societies collapsed. And he knew the cheat code to what happens when an unthinkable atrocity takes place in a society. And from the first moment, Mark didn't have any knowledge of Myanmar. He was barely following the crisis. He'd never been here. He didn't know much. But as he just began to absorb the slightest bit of information, he said things that we are still learning today. In the first few weeks of the coup, he said, this is what you're going through now. This is what will happen later. This is how we have to maximize this window. This is what's going to be coming. And it was the first piece of extraordinary insight I had that kind of changed the nature of the way I engaged with everything that happened ever since. Because I suddenly realized, oh my God, there's a cheat code with the coup. There's a cheat code with the resistance movement. I just thought this, and of course there has to be, because I believe there's a cheat code and a process to everything in life. But this was so new, I was blinded. And Mark reminded me that there is a cheat code to this too. And I was blown away. He was the only person I was talking to at the time that was able to see through the madness and the seeming chaotic spontaneity and tragedy and everything else, and very calmly be able to talk about what was happening, what was going to happen, how you needed to shift in this and that window. And so I'm going back through all these experiences because I want to highlight, I want listeners not just to hear what you're saying as like, oh, okay, this is a nice reminder that I need to be kind to people or be easy on myself. Yes, it's that. But it's also the fact that there are cheat codes in life. There are processes in life. And it is so liberating when you are feeling a certain way. The cheat code is not going to stop you from feeling that way, but it is going to normalize it and make you realize, oh, this is the stage I'm at. And I really love what you're saying about going against nature. Because meditation is all about discovering the nature inside yourself and aligning yourself with nature. And the idea of a process is the aspect of nature revealing itself. And not being able to think that we're so arrogant that we could do whatever we want, whenever we want, but realizing there are windows, there are highs, there are lows, there are periods for hibernation. Nature teaches us hibernation, sleep, all of these things. This is not giving up. It's not black and white. It's, and as you say, part of the problem has been these kind of intense sugar highs of constant need for good news and on the verge of victory that we saw from the first months of the coup, from the top leadership of the NUG and other democratic leadership, that cannot be sustained. So you're setting people up for the drop, and then when they're at that drop, there's nothing to do but keep trying to lift them up again and again and again, the body and the mind can't do that. And so the cheat code for understanding as to where you're at a certain point, what is the maximum value you could be doing to align with nature? Is it to be passionate and going out in the streets and screaming slogans? Yes, sometimes. Not all the time. Is it to catch up on rest, to do meditation, to eat well, to eat good food, to learn a new skill, to learn a hobby while still engaging somewhat? Yes, there's a time for that. Sometimes, not all the time. Revolutions will not be won by, sleeping 12 hours a day for, any period, but there is a time for that. And knowing what stage we're at and what you need to maximize in that window, do you need to capture sleep, or do you need to capture, activity and activism? That allows you to maximize what nature is giving you. So I want to underscore everything you're saying with just kind of how much this has transformed my life. But then I want to put the question to you of, you are one voice sharing this. We are one platform bringing this. And this will have some degree of impact. But what leaders do is important. And if World War II teaches us anything, it is the incredible, impeccable leadership of Winston Churchill and FDR. And what they were able to do using their technologies and using their innovativeness in the darkest of times, what those leaders were able to do to inspire their people. Germany wanted to bomb London into oblivion. And Churchill used that relentless siege to actually make them more resilient, more resistant, more angry. They were not cowed into submission because of the leadership that Churchill showed there and in many other places. They wanted to win more badly than they ever did. And that's what leadership can do. And if Churchill was not Churchill, and the leadership was different, to whatever degree you had voices on the ground, forget about the technologies that existed then, podcasts and stuff we have now, whatever the voices on the ground were trying to do, it would be hard to have it consistently undermined by a weak leadership. And so, the hard question I want to put to you is that as you are giving us this critical, liberating information and cheat code to be able to share, it's my opinion, you may not share it and you could talk in a moment, that it's my opinion that the leadership has not understood this and possibly is not capable of understanding this. And if that is the case, which you can engage on, but if that is the case, what is left, and even talk about what a unified leadership means at this point, but what is left for the populace, for individual voices like you to remind and inspire a society that there are these different stages and processes to engage?
Going back about the processes, like a lot, like you also said, right? At the beginning, you thought that it was like some kind of the coup, there's an emotional burst, like people came out and as if. But I just wanted to remind that everything is a process. I do not see the anti-coup protests and 2021 protests in the movement, the current movement. It's not a standalone process. I think it is a process that is the continuation of the previous movement, like 1988, student 1988 general movement, and also like 96, 98 student movement, and also the 2007, all those things. So one of the slogans in our movement, movement of our time, is that we are 2021. We're 21. We're different from the 88. That the 88, you guys have failed, and therefore we are continuing. Which I want to refute that narrative. That if I ask people, say that 1988 movement has failed, which is like one of the biggest movement in the country. But I refuse that. I refuse to take it as a failure. I didn't think the 1988 movement, I don't think it has failed. I see two different parts. Public movement, people movement in Myanmar has never really failed. But what has failed is the political transition that is pushed that was given upon by the movement, couldn't necessarily deliver the way out. So I don't think 1988 movement has failed. And we are actually, here we are is more because they have paved their way. Therefore we can learn from the other movement, all other movement around the world. We can learn from this and we build on our movement. None of them that we are doing is not. Some of them are new, new tactic, new idea, but then it's not a standalone process. It's not like just us, who knows it this way. Everybody ahead of us have done that. They have paved the way. So I see it as a continuation of the previous movement. And so even now, our movement, whatever we do in the future, that will be the learning for the future generation to come. So every movement for me is like a kind of continuation and the kind of connection. We are all in the same, that wave, the movement campus thing. So which means it's a long journey that we have come, and there's a long journey we're gonna have to go. So thinking about that, knowing this, or realizing or acknowledging this, in a way, make you feel yourself in a certain place. Again, I have to admit that I'm telling it from the privileged perspective. The fact that I am being able to think, being able to reflect, it's because I am not living in a place where the airstrike is hitting me every day. But that is exactly the role of the people outside of the country should be doing, because we are not having this life and death situation, but we may have other struggle. But maybe all of us, what about we think, reflect ourselves, or maybe remind the people who are running and just okay, look, we are all in this together, and it's okay, it's scary, it's all darkness, but we are all in this together. We reflect it, and we can also share this kind of I don't want to say hope, but it's more of a way of sharing the reality and help people go through the process together. I think that's important. And going to the leadership, why the leadership, maybe they don't know, and all this and all that. To be honest, I don't really like to blame them, even though I am very disappointed at their leadership, at their policy choices and everything. But then at the same time, I can understand where they come from, because a lot of the leaders now, if you think about Myanmar, always been this kind of political instability, make a lot of young people going to jail or to the jungle rather than going to school. So a lot of people taking the leadership position, they have sacrificed a lot in their life. And a lot of people, pretty much everyone in the country, are extremely traumatized. And I am privileged and lucky enough to have a better education, or being able to think like this, talk like this. It's because of what they have done, what they have paved the way for me. So I really acknowledge my privilege, as well as I also understand their shortcoming, not in a condescending way. I'm not saying, look at them, they don't know, look at me, I know it all. That's not where I come from. Now, my point is this kind of, when people are so traumatized, in a way, it's quite difficult for people to have a strategy of reflect, because reflection is such a heavy thing. When you reflect, it's just, you have to stop, you have to think. And being able to reflect is a privilege, that you have time and energy to really reflect. It's also a privilege that I have, but maybe a lot of people, including the people in the leadership, may not have that. So when people are running in a fight in this kind of movement, everybody have to keep running and running and running. And so if they stop and reflect, it means their whole existence is based upon this running. That's going to fall apart. That's going to be the existential threat to them. So I think, therefore, they may not be able to, or they don't want to reflect on it. And a lot of people were so worried that I think their generation, that maybe they think that we are carrying the unfinished legacy of them. Therefore, we need to get it finished not for the next generation. So people come from a compassionate background, compassionate where they come from, compassion. But I think, maybe me being able to access to this kind of theoretical frameworks and all this and all that, it's come from my privileged perspective. So I don't blame them. But that doesn't mean that I'm covering up for all the things that they have done. There are things that they have done wrong as well. But yeah, I think it's my role, even if I'm a one person, maybe that might be my role in this movement, to remind people of what we have and just to help people to keep moving on. I don't see myself as a leader. I don't see myself as a face or be the upfront of it, but I would want to be that somebody who people can lean onto when they got tired. And I want to be this candle holder with my small light. When everything is dark, I still want to hold my light. And then people can come and get the light from me when they are tired. So I think that might be my role. And everything is a process. And in Buddhism, it's also kind of, things happen to be at this right place at the right time. Maybe I'm telling this now. Maybe this is the time for me to say this from this platform. Who knows what the impact would be, but I think this is supposed to be and a bit more calmer in a way to, I'm not optimistic, but in a way, I'm not pessimistic either. I just see the way it is and I prepare myself how to keep on going. So the same thing, I want a lot of my friends, fellow, to really have a bit of realization and a bit of know their own emotion.
And if this is karma and this is what you're meant to say, then maybe there is someone who's meant to listen to this now. We can put that out there as well. I would push back a little bit on what you said, and these are the arguments I would make. Firstly, I would say that revolutions are not supposed to be easy. Revolutions are not supposed to be places where, I don't want to say they're not supposed to be, but typically revolutions are not places where people have a lot of luxury and privilege to be able to reflect and think and methodically act in the moment. They're places where leadership is born of fire and people come out of the ashes. And through the effort to achieve what it is they want to achieve, they struggle and they find their way. I think that's historically what happened. It's never changed. It's been 5 years. And I think, where there is culpability to be able to look at, what could be different. I think certainly there's some questions with leadership, but I also wonder about, the ability for free conversation and communication, because I think this is, whenever a society is plagued or conditioned by certain authoritarian impulses, it is hard to just shed those even when the laws change or you move to a different society or you have a different group. It is hard to not subconsciously the ways that you were raised. And Myanmar is a place that's, whether in monasteries or churches or schools or government or kings, it's been, or colonial times, it's been a place of top-down hierarchical leadership with suppression of free thought and to be able to express oneself. And, there has been a very strong pushback in some communities, and I would add to Western activist groups as well, to want to continue promoting and sugarcoating and kind of artificially highlighting the validity of the NUG at times, to not want to have any gaps or breaks. And I think that has created a delusional line of argumentation that as more and more people have seen what the case really is, they don't know how to have a serious conversation when it's so obvious that some of these things are being inflated. And the problem is when you suppress dissenting speech or opinions, and when you make it punishable, even just social punishment to be able to say those things, then and you try to control that narrative, then you're you're certainly not fixing the problem, but you're actually making the problem worse, because whenever you suppress anything, whether it's alcoholism or domestic abuse or whatever it is, whenever you suppress anything, you're just feeding the monster. You're just feeding it to be able to get stronger in the darkness that you're keeping it locked in that cage. And so I think that to this day, the tendency to want to push these things away and prohibit free thought and exploration in the hopes that this artificial narrative can be created that can somehow fool the world over that things are actually the way that we're saying it is, that's not working. And that's still an issue of, it's still a very prevalent issue of a certain kind of fear among the part of many to be able to talk about how they really feel. And so things just don't get talked about. And so I think that, one of the issues is, is this lack of accountability and lack of transparency, and just kind of what are they doing? Just the eternal question of what they're busy all the time. Like, what are they actually doing? What do these acronyms actually stand for? And how could it be? I've spoken to diplomats and longtime aid workers. I'm sure as you are, most of their comments about their interactions reach a level of explicit language that are not appropriate to share on this platform is the tenor of the frustration that I hear, as I'm sure you have as well. And so, I do think it is a time for honest democratic talk of an opinion, certainly not an agenda, but of an opinion, a frustration that and I don't mean to go off track here, because I see this as part and parcel of the process that we're in. What stage and phase we are of how it's reasonable for us to feel at this time. To be able to talk about that, it takes a leadership to remind us where we are and keep us through. And if that leadership is not there, to make excuses why it's not there, I that's what I have to push back on, because this is supposed to be hard, and you either rise to those circumstances or you don't, and history will judge you. There's no arbitrary judge you can go to later and say, look, we really tried hard, but we were up against this and this and this, and that's why you should intervene and help us. There's no godly figure that will do that. You either do it or you don't, and if you don't, then you lose a revolution. So maybe that's unfair. Maybe that's hard talk. What do you think of that?
For me, the biggest failure of the leadership is not that they could not. I don't think. Okay, the biggest failure of this current leadership for me, it's killing of the different voices, like this killing the platform of blocking the platform of free speeches and free opinion. I see it as the biggest failure of the leadership. Not that they couldn't get the legitimacy from the international community, not that they couldn't get the humanitarian aid channeling into the country, not that they couldn't win they couldn't form the armed coalition, and not that they couldn't win the military militarily. I think it's more that they couldn't protect the space of free speech.
Those are bold words.
Yeah. I think, once you cut out the free speech, you just cut out your own ears and your own organs. That's basically, especially in the harder time. But I understand their reason as well, even though I do not, even though I make a bold statement, but I also understand where it comes from, because people will worry, we have to have a same narrative. We have to be this and that, so that this and this people is gonna recognize us, and all this and all that. They have enormous pressure. So, because of that, one mistake is that they started making this the same narrative, like particular narrative. Like everybody have to stay on the same narrative, and everybody have to stick together. Anybody who is going against that is not acceptable, which is such a shame, because we are fighting because we couldn't say freely. We are fighting against the military because we can't express ourselves freely. We don't feel secure about expressing our thoughts and our speech. So therefore, we are fighting against this fundamental issue. But now the resistant leader, in a way, trying to block and people, and also the advisor, foreign advisors and everything. Like me, why are we producing this kind of particular narrative, which is called like positive narrative, and by showing everything is perfectly fine, as if like let's not talk about things that is wrong. For me, I call it the positive narrative, like false and positive, because for me, when people tell me like, oh, what's the positive message? And positive message is that we are still fighting. We are very within 5 years, this is like military brutalized. I have seen this brutality in being my documentation work for like over 15 years. I have seen how brutal this military could have been. And I'm not even surprised on how brutalized they are. I am even surprised that they haven't done more than that. Yeah. I'm not really by this, because since we go into this route, I kind of expect what, revolution is bloody. Revolution by nature just is a painful process until you win. And so yeah, that kind of, but then meanwhile, I think we need to protect the democratic space and freedom of expression, that we need to do that. But then I think one major failure of this current leadership is that they didn't allow these different voices, and they're trying to coerce by different means. So that is not really, that is for me is like quite a failure in the leadership. And also other thing is, I don't understand why we need to be having on the same narrative. The thing is, I believe in this resistance. I believe in people. I believe in our movement that we are going to win. I just don't know how and when. But I totally believe when I see it as a process. It's process carry on. We are gonna win against this brutal military, maybe this generation or next generation or whatever. I don't know. But what I know is that I believe that we are gonna win. So when I believe in it, I don't need to line the facts. If you line the facts, you don't believe in it. Why? What's the point of lying? If you believe that you are winning, if you believe that we are winning, if you believe that we are gonna win, why lie? Lying is not helpful. It's just not really. If you lie, you don't believe in it. I don't lie about things that I believe in. It must be hard. It's just not easy. And it will be different opinions, and people will be frustrated. This is a dark time. And of course, in the darkness, everybody might want to share their frustration, but killing that space, it's not really okay. And why do you do that? If you believe that we're going to win, why do you have to kill the different voices that is against the popular narrative?
Right. Democratic processes are messy. And that's why authoritarian answers, and authoritarian can be on the side of so-called democratic resistance. It's a nature of relating, not just a system. It's an attitude of norms and values, and there could be authoritarian natures in schools or families or many other places. And I think if you really hold democratic values dear, not democratic systems, but democratic values dear, then you are not afraid by that messiness. You are not intimidated by giving voice to someone who feels very differently than you are. You do not feel you have to compete with them. You do not feel you have to win them over. You don't feel that you have an agenda where you have to bring them to your side. You're excited to be able to have a range of ideas that can have kind of a civil engagement, a civil discussion. And actually, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of, I think, your second or third appearance on this platform, where we had a panel discussion, which basically turned into kind of like a town hall, we can say, where we had you and another member of your generation, and then we had a couple of elders, all in the democratic resistance. And there was a narrative there that became a disagreement, and that was on the treatment of Rohingya. And there was a civil exchange of disagreement between a youth member and an elder member as to what the real story of the Rohingya was. And the elder had a certain line that he was saying, and the youth pushed back against that line, against the real history that he felt, and it did not devolve. We didn't have to be afraid of it. They had an exchange, and they learned from each other, and I think they learned from each other. They didn't walk away with the same understanding. But then later in the episode, or later in the panel, the elder, who's somewhat known as bureaucrat or technocrat and just kind of operating within the system, he was prompted and he opened up about his experiences in prison and the horrible conditions that he had to bear for many, many years to get where he was. And you then told me afterwards, I realized I was being kind of unfair to him in a way. It doesn't mean I feel anything differently about what he does and what he believes and how he's doing it, but I forgot what he had to go through to get to that point. And I need to bring that to mind when I talk to him. He's not just an elder that's kind of pushing me down. He's someone that has this past and endured all of this for this reason. And the thing that was so powerful about that whole experience from start to finish and your reflections on it was that, and you also had mentioned after that happened, you were so excited that this virtually a town hall existed. You said, we little people have never had the opportunity to put our voices and have them heard, and to have, what is democracy but a civil discourse, which is fading in my country, that, supposedly the strong democratic values where we can't talk to each other, another story. But a cornerstone of democratic values is being able to talk in a civil discourse, to listen to each other, to not be afraid, to not have it turn toxic, to not turn away from people, but to turn towards them. Not when we disagree, and especially when we disagree with each other. And so what was so interesting was this panel we convened was not convened as a way to get people on different sides talking. It was a way to bring different Myanmar voices to tell non-Myanmar people what was happening in their country. But kind of accidentally, inadvertently, as some issues came up, those disagreements naturally were there, and then they were addressed with among the panelists directly. And so it turned into where it meant to be an outward-facing show of education and illustration, and ended up being kind of like an internal dynamic of speaking towards each other, not to each other, but towards each other with different opinions, and being able to listen and understand those different opinions and not agreeing, but knowing they were there and being treated with respect. And after it was done, I remember the other thing you said is you felt so empowered that this space hadn't existed in other cases, that you felt so empowered that there was a place for you to talk and be heard. Again, not be agreed with, not have policies change, but just that your voice mattered and you could say something. So this is all coming to me now.
Yeah, I always consider my voice matter. A lot of the people, I noticed this in this resistance, people keep telling me I've been collecting people's story, and then most people say that, compared to this and this person sacrifice, I am nobody, my story doesn't matter, my voice doesn't matter. Which I told them that, no, your voice matter, your story matter. It may not be as big as other, it may not be as small as other. You matter because every one of us matter. So I always make sure that I matter. My voice matter. I'm not really gonna be like, oh, sorry, my voice doesn't matter, I am this and that. No, my voice matter. So, and also I'm not really afraid to have a pushback, or kind of, even if some of the day, even if I will be alone, I would just stick to certain things. I have been in the very lonely fight. Like, for example, Rohingya, standing up for Rohingya, the beginning at that time was very difficult. Even you can't even say the word. You felt so lonely. But now at least you have other people around you. It's not as lonely as Rohingya, standing up for Rohingya. But even so, there were lots of people who were attacked. But then I would be like, I just believe in it, like that. This is what I believe in. And when there are more people talking about Rohingya issue, I step out because my role has already done. I just make it my voice matter, and other people's gonna carry. The same thing now, I'm just gonna say what I believe in saying, because I can defend what I believe in. So I'm not really afraid, even if it is just alone. But the only thing is I don't involve in every conversation. I don't really say everything in general, because if I have to say, there are a lot of things to say, but I just pick my fight, and I just don't want to involve in so many fights, because at the end of the day, everybody is tired. And also the thing is, I would only like to, like being Burmese, it's the way how Burmese people appreciate your advice is that you are also in it. So I think that matters. So at this stage, I don't want to position myself as like I know it better than other people. I would rather, even though some of the things are not going well, not according to what I wish, I would rather go with the people. And I want to be there for my friends and the people around. And then sometimes I would rather want to wait ahead of time rather than convincing what is right and what is wrong. Because I believe in the process, I believe in the nature. If I think about certain thing in a certain moment, other people's gonna think about this thing in that moment. So I just wanted to be ready when they need me, and then I step out when I am not needed. So that's how I interact, and that's how I save my energy. That's how I put my energy. So this is how I interact with the movement, and I wouldn't really like to tell other people how they should be doing. Rather, I will just go with them and just be there with them. And meanwhile, I will also keep on my own path so that when they needed me, I can be ready. When a lot of people do not have time to study, I study so that they can rely on me when they need a particular thing. And the same thing, while people are walking, I might want to go out and get the water so that when they got tired, they can get that water. So that's where I see my role is in the movement.
It's very interesting to look at your trajectory, because as to remind listeners, or those who might not have heard previous episodes from you, you were very involved in this kind of human rights documentation. As you mentioned, it was a lonely fight with the Rohingya in 2017 when there were not many Bamar allies that you had, and you had to be careful with your advocacy, even the spotlight that put on you because things were so tense at the time. When the coup hit, you had kind of stepped out of that world and you were in a different world, and the coup really pulled you back into your area of scale that you thought you had left behind. And then during those first couple of years, I mean, you, as with many other people, you went through hell. You have breakdowns with emotion, with being overwhelmed, with being hopeless, with being elated probably at times. I mean, you went through all of these natural cycles, and you uprooted your life and changed your entire life and physical location and community based on what those needs were. And so that's why, when I was talking to these other people, to refer back to the beginning of the conversation, and they had this, there were people I was talking to that are so informed and so looped in and so active that their dark foreboding, the dark clouds over them, I'd never seen that nature of them before. I was shocked to see the life starting to drain out of them. And so when I saw you again, that was the first thing I wanted to ask. How are you holding up? What are you thinking? What's your assessment at? And I was kind of expecting something along the range of the others that I was talking to. And, you do have this glow, you do have this radiance and this calm and this peace. And that really does stand out from the emotional cycles you went through before. I don't know whether to call it, like a maturity or a gained wisdom or just a pervading calm, but it's a state to again state what you said is definitively not giving up. or giving in. It's completely accepting the reality. But again, it's the liberating power from knowing what phase you're at. And when I would go into those meditation courses, day 2 was always sucked as much as day 2 did. Things hurt like hell, regrets from the past, fears about the future, desires not to want to be here. The same thing repeated itself that always happened on day 2 in meditation courses. But the power of knowing, this is day 2. Yeah, this is day 2. This sucks. Okay, this is day 2. Let's get on. We'll keep going because I know that this is always the day 2 that knocks on the door. The knowledge, the empowering knowledge you were able to find to feel what you feel, but have that balance of not giving up and yet not sinking into it. It's an incredible kind of gift and skill, and you framed it as being something you learned in through this website and this group, this organization that was giving you this knowledge. But I have a feeling it wasn't just that. I mean, it's such a powerful change in you. I have a feeling that there must have been kind of other forces that made this transformation. And so I'd like to invite you to kind of share in your own words, how that transformative process developed, and to do that in such a way that can invite other people in, other Burmese in, that could be in relative places of privilege like yourself, feeling relative things you are, and thinking about how can I also transform this way?
I don't have an answer for that. Definitely, I have grown. 5 years is a long enough time for someone to face a lot of things and to learn and see a lot in the past 5 years, and loss of friendships, and loss of career, insecurity, loss of home, reunited, and when you reunited with people, you thought that things will stop, but that's not the case. It just really, people have scattered around, and even your best friends to continue the conversation that you have left before when you last met. And when you pick it up, it's just different feel and different takes, and didn't understand each other. So I think 5 years is enough time for people to grow and being able to see it. And a lot of my transformation will be more about reflecting myself and it's all about, I care so much about myself. I'm being very kind to myself. And so I find a way to be kind to myself. And so while trying to be kind to myself, I'm just reflect what I've been doing, what I am not doing. So in a way that this actually soak into it and kind of reflect. And if I were in this position, if I were that person, how would I have been wanted to be treated? What would be my reason? What would be my, what would be my situation? So maybe it all comes from myself, actually. It's even a bit selfish. I just think of it myself and okay, where I should be doing. And also one of my friends who is teaching in the jungle, she also once told me, there's multiple factors, but I remember that one. Because she was saying, the revolution, you just do what you are doing, wherever you are, just whatever you can, however much you can, that is already a revolution. You don't need to really do more than what you can. And also you don't need to do more than what you can or stepping out of the way or stepping into other people's work. So this actually, in a way, validate me, because she is somebody from the jungle, which I would feel guilty. She just give up her life and chose to be there. And she said everybody is a choice, and own your choice. And whatever you are just doing, whatever you're doing is already helping. So I took that wisdom of her, and then I'm just more like, okay, what am I doing? I am doing this, but all the work since before the coup, everything that I have done in a way is contributing one way or another. So I just do my best within my capacity, and meanwhile I try to take care of myself, and also I try to be this kind of person. When you say the glow, I think that's the important part of it, because people told me that in Burmese they call it jidet, which is like transparent power or some kind, glow power, some kind of thing. So when in their dark time, they will come to me, talk to me, and then they said that, okay, kind of cleansing power. I may have. So maybe, I don't know, in this resistance, my role may not be even to do anything. So I keep reminding people, maybe some people, you might not even need to do anything. Your existence itself matters. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's my role in it. Like when people are tired, I will be the shoulder that they can lean onto. And keeping this glow actually is it cannot be fake. It has to be within yourself, and you really have to genuinely believe in particular peace, especially in the middle of chaos. And so I think that may have helped other people to continue what they need to be doing. Meanwhile, I continue doing what I need to be doing. I never stop a day. I work a lot. And I work a lot of things that I'm working for the revolution. So I know myself. I know how much I have given in. So I am happy with what I have done.
It reminds me of another one of those early lessons that Mark gave us, and that was at a time when everyone wanted to run full throttle into the front, and those who didn't or couldn't felt guilty that they were worthless. Mark stressed so much how that was only a very small subset of people who were qualified and should be doing that, and how there were so many acts of resistance and solidarity and support that we're away from that. And I think, just in case anyone thinks I'm being too hard in my endeavor to want to be transparent about my concerns about some of the leadership, I would balance that by saying that the wider Burmese community writ large en masse in Burma and around the world, it has done things that should be getting an award, that should have Greta Thunberg and much higher people, let's be honest, speaking about. It should be studied in history classes. It should be in books. It should be something that is looked at all around the world forevermore, because this wider community has following in kind of what Mark had said in those early days when no one else could really figure it out because it was all so new. They, to a large degree, many have figured it out, and the innovativeness that so many have done. I don't know how many countries or cultures, not just around the world, but at any space or time, would be capable of meeting these conditions the way the Burmese have. And I think there's reasons for that. I think that, going back to 1962, they share that sense of believing that this is one continuation. As one friend whose activist father was in 88 said to me, he firmly believes that 88 was not a failure, that it was stepping along the way, which we're now continuing, and it's in the blood. It's something I think a lot of foreigners don't quite understand, how much this embedded knowledge is there, and because Burmese just aren't the type to go and share and talk a lot and want to instruct foreigners. Unless you're asking the right questions, you're not really going to hear those answers that you're looking for, and that's why I think foreign observers and journalists and diplomats miss this so often, because they're not asking the right questions and the right things aren't being volunteered. But there is this extraordinary lived sense of what happened. That combined with the relative freedoms that happened in the transition created this volatile mix of, as you say, the 21 generation, don't mess with this generation line, made it different. That they were, in some ways, they were a break from what came before, but in other ways, everything that came before was a complete trajectory that enabled that break to take place. And so, just as we might talk about some of the, I think it's fair to talk about, and I think there are legitimate and very serious concerns with leadership, that has to be balanced with this society, not just this society doing what it's doing now, but this society at this point in time capable of doing what it's doing. And, I would challenge a lot of people and historians to really pinpoint any other society at any other point in time that is capable of doing what we've seen. And I think this is where it gets, it's where there is a version and a vision of success down the road, and that has to be held. You have to hold those aspirations. You have to visualize what you want to make it a reality. That's very important. You have to do that while also not having this black and white view that nothing matters because we haven't been there. All of these things that we talk about, they are all this and so much more are avenues that should be celebrated and acknowledged. And I hate to say this, but going back again to another thing that Mark said is, I remember Mark speaking a lot in those early days about the importance of small victories, the importance of small accomplishments, not trying to take on too much, but doing a little bit more, and a little bit more. And the good feelings that small successes could bring lead you on to greater successes. And trying too hard to go too far can sometimes set you up for, the emotional and psychological letdown instead of building up to that.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people, a lot of international communities started knowing about Myanmar after the country opened up. So they started looking at the Myanmar from that point. So for them, maybe the diplomat come in and, foreign affairs come in and go. And then journalists who knows Myanmar after the country opened up, they would be like, oh my God, this is such a mess. And what's the strategy? How are you going to do? I understand their concern, but at the same time, it's a movement, and it's not started post country open up. It has always been there. It's always been our life. And then also, I don't understand why they needed this motivation, like why our life at risk and them in the air conditioner. I wonder what's exactly is something they need us to cheer them up, which is not fair for us. And also, I think like the leadership trying to please that, in the name of the legitimacy. To be honest, I don't know what to expect from the world that has betrayed its own value, right? They educated us this kind of democracy and human rights when we are in crisis. Now it doesn't even care to really, care to intervene. So what's the point? It's like, why are we even, hurting each other just for the sake of the international community not to lose hope on us, while a lot of us living in it never lost hope in the movement. So I think the leadership should look inward rather than looking outward and trying to assess what we have, and trying to lead people to celebrate what we have and trying to move forward, trying to give the people to have a chance to share different opinion, trying to let the people to be vulnerable. So I think that would have been more leading towards the success, maybe. In this difficult time, what I have learned is this kind of, at the end of the day, I just want people to remember, or myself, what I remember, it's not about the brutality of how brutal the military is and all the airstrikes and all the atrocity that they have committed. a lot of the things that were, left in my mind are the, little kindness that we have during the protest time, and little bit of happiness, small bit of enjoyment. Being in exile here, people support each other, and even like when someone is sick, when you are away from home, you just take care of each other, and the community, which I would never have if I have never been in exile. So little thing those are the things that I would choose to remember, not how bad the military is, how brutal they are to us. I would rather choose to remember the kindness and the community and the resilience of people that are against all the brutal form of any form of oppression. Yeah. Thank you. Also, this is like this part of I am sharing this because I am at this stage of my life. As you know, and I'm in different stages in this episode, in this podcast. So every stages of my life, I will be different. And I'm very grateful that I will be, vulnerable enough to show myself at different part of my life, different thoughts to people, the listener, such a privilege. And maybe at some point in next, I don't know, months or year, when you, if I will be on this platform again, I might be at another stage and I might be in another form. And hey, I don't know, I'm looking forward to that stage of Thiri. Like, I am looking forward to myself at that stage. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. As regular listeners know, we often remind our audience about our nonprofit mission, Better Burma, at the end of a show. Truth be told, fundraising is hard work, and I can personally attest that it's no fun at all to keep asking for contributions. But the reality is the situation on the ground continues to be distressing, and our work would simply not be possible without your support. What helps us most at this time are recurring donations. This provides our team with a reliable foundation, and it helps to reduce the stress of this constant fundraising. This also allows us to focus more energy on creating impactful content for this podcast, as well as to better plan sustainable humanitarian aid to vulnerable populations. Even a monthly pledge really helps. Like, say, gift us the equivalent of, a cup of coffee each month, or consider us a streaming service that you subscribe to. Anyway, to support our cause and make a lasting impact, visit insightmyanmar.org/donation.
Whatabaya Nangaya Unyana Daduya Danambia Ganezadamana, we got a Besayana, Besayo. Oba Yarananda Dayananga, Yaranaya, Dayanamboda, Yaran.